Hi again, everyone. I hope you've had the opportunity to listen to Bruce's talk on admissions models. And I have a few things I would like to add to that, but Bruce does really a fantastic job of explaining the process that he's utilized at Texas and also the various models that are out there. I have had experience with lots of different types of models. The first institution that I worked at had a relatively open door policy. Essentially, when you work for one of those schools that no one has heard of, it's really difficult to employ some type of selectivity model as you're really in a situation where you need a certain number of students, and open door policies work well in that kind of scenario. So I first started out in really kind of a model that would really have the only requirement being modest success in high school, being a graduate and have taken a fairly good college prep curriculum. And then when I made the transition to Florida State, I was here during the period of time where we made the transition from really an open door public institution to a very selective public institution. So I've had the benefit of looking at lots of different models and utilizing lots of different models. It's always fun when you've worked at one school for a long time because you will talk to alumni that actually now have children that are coming through the process, and it's a lot of fun as you've increased your selectivity and as you've become, as you have utilized a new admissions model to joke with them and tell them that their son or daughter may be admissible now, but they're lucky they're not going through the process at this moment because they would not be. And so admissions models really do dictate who enrolls at your school. I mentioned the Andrew College model of being fairly open door. It was kind of at the low end of that scale in terms of really wanting just about anybody. You know, I was willing to talk to any prospect anywhere and try to sell them on being able to come to the school. And so there really wasn't much issue with whether or not the student was going to be admitted. And what changes is that when you go to work for a school where you have many more students that want to be there, it's kind of the old law of supply and demand. If you have many more students that want to be at your school than you have room to accommodate, then you're going to have to become selective. And really that's what happened to a lot of the public institutions in this country. We really became selective because the demand became so great. We certainly offer high quality programs, and that attracted more and more students, but the truth is the population drove that as well. We had lots of students and very limited capacity, and so we all had to become much more selective and adopt different types of models. And so it is a situation that you're lucky if you are a selective institution. But if you're not, I want to point out that it's really a lot of fun working at an open door institution because you're able to help every single student. And if you are working at a more selective school, most of the information that Bruce relayed and that we're focused on has to do with FTIC admissions, or your first time in college admissions. But keep in mind there's also another group out there that's very important, and that's transfer admissions. And most of the transfer admission models, there's really various kinds, but most of them tend to be some kind of formula driven based upon the type of courses they've taken and how those meet the major that they're searching for at your school, and maybe some type of GPA criteria. But I know in the state of Florida, one of the nice things about our state is that there is an articulation agreement that says if you go to a community college, or to be honest now, most of them are state colleges. They've added baccalaureate programs. But if you get an associate in arts degree or a two-year degree from a state college, that you are then admissible to the university. And so we never really deny students. Even though I'm a very selective school, I spend a lot of my time telling students that really it's just a delay. You can get to Florida State because there's this other avenue open to you. You can transfer to us and still get a degree from Florida State. So that aspect of admissions models is nice to consider as well. So as you become more selective, is that selectivity a one-time thing that students will never have another shot at your school if they're turned down, or is there another way to get to your school, which is really a different model, a different way to gain admission to your institution? But getting back to the selective model, I mentioned that I thought Bruce did a tremendous job, and I would like to talk a little bit, not really too specifically about what we do at Florida State, not that it's a big mystery because it really isn't, but it really mimics what Bruce has described for you already. But on that admissions grid, one of the differences that we have undertaken here, and I think many schools do, is that he showed you the grid, and if you'll remember, there's different cells within that grid. And he was just drawing the line for admit or deny around all of those cells. And one of the things that we've really tried to do is actually become a little bit more discerning about what's within each of those cells. And so you can find out the composition of each of those cells based upon the things that are important to you. So you can find out how many first-generation students are in that cell, how many students of color are in that cell, how many of anything that you're looking for are in that particular cell. And so whatever is important to you as a university, sometimes when you're setting those lines, you can set them based upon the characteristics of each of those cells. And so you know if you move the line this place or that place, that you actually may be impacting 20 students of color, or 5 first-generation kids, and so it gives you a lot more information. And so this idea of setting up an admissions grid is great, but then also of being able to find out who's in each one of those cells, what is this decision going to impact in terms of your overall goals at the university. Getting back to that for a second, you will have goals that you have to meet, and it's very important for the admissions director and the enrollment manager to meet those goals. As it was explained to me a long time ago, you basically have about 3 goals that admissions is always faced with, particularly in the selective school admissions. First of all is the goal of quantity, which is never really a problem because your demand usually is so great that you're going to get the number of students you want. But then you're going to be faced with the goals of things like quality. How good are the students? How do they compare to past years? How much capacity do you have to improve the quality of your student body? Your president may want to move up in the rankings. To move up in the rankings, you may have to increase your test scores, you may have to increase your GPA, you may have to include class rank in there. So there's ways that you may be asked to improve quality. Diversity will also be on the minds of many schools, one of the things that I care deeply about. And so you may have diversity goals of trying to improve the diversity of your student body. All those goals are very, very important, but I do want to stress one thing, and this was told to me a long, long time ago. All the goals are important, but the first goal, the goal of quantity, is the one that is most likely to get you fired. If you're working at an institution and you have a goal to bring in a certain number of students, the quickest way to get fired is to not meet that goal. And so I always consider that job one. And so when you look at your admissions model, always take that in mind. That's your first consideration is, can I design a model that will give me the students that I need to meet that particular goal? Because if you come up short in quantity, there's a real good chance that you will not be kept or retained at that school because it's so critical. As you know, most schools have some type of budget concern that is driven by tuition revenue, and so the number of people in terms of the quantity is really very critical. I'm not saying the others aren't. I certainly care deeply about diversity. I certainly care about the quality of schools, of the school, but in terms of the one that'll get you fired the quickest, it's going to be quantity. The other ones will kick in as well, but trust me when I say you should always consider quantity first. Now, after that, feel free to look at diversity and quality, and that's where these admissions models really do begin to discern what it is that you're interested in, because your goals for your particular class will determine what's important in that admissions model. You remember all the different factors that Bruce was talking about. There's really not a lot of different factors out there, but it's really the difference is how you weigh those factors. He mentioned that the essay may not be considered important by some, or references may not be considered. Some schools may use interviews, some may not. Some care about the student resume, some care about how they spend their time outside the classroom. All of those different factors, all of those different personal achievements, I think, are character issues, as Bruce referred to them. Those are all really the things that all of us look at. What makes our models different is how much weight we put in each of those categories. And so depending on what your goals are, that's how you will begin to shape your admissions model. And in the ideal world, your admissions model will be a reflection of the priorities that you've set as an institution, or that will help you to meet the goals that have been given to you. I think I want to close on admissions model with just a little bit of talk on the issue that comes up quite often, and that's transparency. Admissions profession is very interesting to me. I've always enjoyed it. One of the things I always used to be told is that admissions people were like car salesmen, that we would tell somebody anything to get them to enroll at our school. And I guess if you didn't consider fit and tried to think of yourself as a counselor, that's a pretty apt description. Another one that I'm hearing lately is that we're almost like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz. We like to keep everything behind a closed curtain. And so when you talk about admissions models, that's one of the things that we really like to keep the most secret. And I always encourage admissions directors to think about that. So to think about how you're going to communicate what it is that students need to be admitted to your school. And how secret do you need to be? How much of it is really black box information, and how much is it just information that you don't want to share? And so as you look at your model, think about all those things of communication. What parts of it can you communicate to students effectively, so they'll have a better understanding of what it takes to be admitted to your school. I think it's really unfair, for example, if you don't care about essays, or if essays mean very little to you, that you say in your spiel that, oh, essays are very important, you should spend a lot of time on your essays. So it's that kind of transparency I'm talking about, letting people know what the criteria are that you value and what it is that you're looking for. And that certainly really carries over into all the areas that I'll call exceptions. You know, what's important to your institution? If you work at a large public like I do, first thing you might think of in terms of what's important to us might be athletics. Everyone's heard of a football exception, and certainly those are there. So you have your athletic exceptions that are going to have varying degrees of importance depending on the school that you work for. There's also going to be exceptions for music and dance and other types of special talents or skills, and those are going to vary from school to school. And there's also going to be special exceptions for first generation, low socioeconomic. All those type of things might work their way into your model, but you need to make people aware of that. Those should not be secrets. You should let people know exactly what it is that your institution values and how that is going to be considered in the admissions process. So with that last word on transparency, I'll end my little session on admissions models, but there's some great assignments here. Looking forward to reading them and for you to take the time to see if your admissions model really matches your institutional mission, and by matching that mission, matching the priorities that you've been given for your admission goals. So good luck with the assignments, and look forward to reading your results.